Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more slug testing, and today we've got another really interesting combination to run. We have tested these slugs a little while back on the channel, but in a little bit different capacity through a different gun with a different choke setup and stuff. They did surprisingly nice there, and we actually tried to do some deer hunting with them last fall, but things just didn't work out. It got real late in the season, and we didn't really end up getting done what we wanted to. But as we were testing those last fall, a lot of you guys said, hey, I know you've got this other 410. Why don't you bring some more of those shells out and run them through this type of setup? So here we are. It's taken a little bit since then, but this should be a rather interesting test because this could make for a surprisingly nice, very handy, lightweight, kind of close range deer hunting gun, especially for people that may be in states where you can't use a rifle and you're limited to shotgun or something of that nature. Or if you've got a kid that's hunting in one of those areas as well. So this should be rather interesting because we're going to put them through the paces and see how good they can actually do. Before the shells we've got, I brought out some more of the Brenneke 410 slugs. These ones are a 3-inch quarter-ounce slug, which Brenneke says is 114 grains. Quarter ounce is closer to 109, but they do have a little plastic tail piece that sticks in the back of the lead slug, so they could be including that in the weight as well. And the back of the box says 1755 for a muzzle velocity, along with a little shy of 800 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Now, like I said, we have tested these 410 Brenneke slugs last fall through a Mossberg 500 with some perfectly adequate results for anything from predators all the way up into the deer range as well. Anything 50 yards and in, we saw the performance in some water jugs. They've got plenty of penetration, they're carrying decent velocity and stuff behind them, so they definitely could work. And if I'm deer hunting with a 410 slug, which isn't nearly as good as a 20 or 12 gauge slug, I want the best I can get, and these are definitely that. They give the most reliable penetration. They don't expand all that much, but it's a Brenneke slug. They're not really intended to. Problem with rifled slugs is they come to pieces pretty much as soon as they enter in any sort of tissue material. These do not. So if you want to deer hunt with a 410 slug, these are the way to go, and we'll see how they perform through the setup we've got today, which happens to be my old NEF Pardner model SB1. This is a youth model 410. It has a 22-inch barrel on it with a fixed full choke out of the end. I have a red dot mounted on top here, and I've even had to add a bunch of length of pull to it because of how short and compact it is, but it weighs nothing. It's very light, very compact, very handy. So this could make for a very interesting close to mid-range deer gun. Think bow ranges, definitely inside of 50 yards, if those Brenneke slugs are accurate out of it. Now, I have tested some other slugs through this gun. I don't know if I've put them on video yet or not, but it's typically a surprisingly nice slug shooter, although it doesn't have the best trigger in it. It's a little bit on the heavy side. So this should make for a rather interesting combination to see what they can really do from a single shot fixed choke type of setup like this. So for how we're going to run this test, we're going to start by getting some accuracy results, and then I've got some ballistics gel out here today as well that we're going to run a shell into and see what kind of penetration and wound cavity we can actually get. So we'll start with the accuracy. We'll shoot a 3-shot group at 25 yards and another 3-shot group at 50 yards. I think 50 and in is a pretty good range capability for these. I wouldn't want to push them much farther past that for deer hunting, in my personal taste anyway, but we'll see how accurate we can be with them at 25 and 50, and then we'll go over to the gel and see what they do for terminal performance. So let's get you guys a view of these targets. We'll start at 25 yards, move it to 50, and see what we get for accuracy potential. Alright, so quick run through for the chronograph numbers before we go look at our target. We have a boss claim of 1755, but we only have a 22-inch barrel. So usually this gun runs a little bit under boss claim with a lot of shells. So I didn't expect to see the full 1755, but I wouldn't have minded to see 1600 or so. But we weren't quite there. It seemed like we were bouncing right around the 1500 mark. So for a high, we had 1522. For a low, we had 1448. That gave us an average of 1495 with an extreme spread of 74 and a standard deviation of 26. So at an average of 1495, we are a decent bit below their boss claim velocity out of these. And I would imagine they are somewhere in the 600 range as far as energy goes. But I will do the actual calculations and put that number up here on the screen so you guys can see what we're pushing on average. But it is going to be below their 781 claim. So wouldn't have minded to see a little more velocity, but we have a shorter barrel in this youth model gun. So not entirely surprising. All right, so here we have both of our targets, 25 yards on the top, 50 yards on the bottom, and we can definitely get an idea of what's going on here. Immediately, I don't think we're quite as good as the accuracy we were seeing from my Mossberg 500 when I had an improved cylinder choke screwed into that gun. With that combination, we were getting right at about 2 inches at 50 yards. So this is definitely maybe not quite as good, but it also looks like in our grouping, we may be having two pretty accurate ones and then kind of throwing a flyer here and there as well. That is a pretty heavy trigger on that gun, although it has pretty much no recoil. So I felt great about every trigger pull. Obviously I have a red dot as well, not a precision instrument at 50 yards, but it stays pretty consistent as far as the characteristics go from the top 25 yard group to the bottom 50 yard group. So starting at the top, we had these 3 bullet holes right here, 2 of them pretty much touching and 1 a little low left of the group. It would have been real nice to have that one up there with the rest of them, but that is definitely an adequate 25 yard group. If you wanted to deer hunt or something with this combination, you could do it with that. But is it anything immaculate for 25 yards? No, also not. As for the group size at 25, we're right at 1.56, so 1.5 inches from center to center on the farthest 2 bullet holes across. Again, good enough to do the job, but definitely not precision rifle accuracy, that's for sure. Now moving to the bottom with our 50 yard spread, I was aiming for the center of this bottom target. Obviously, that red dot is a little bit to the left. It's zeroed for turkey loads and stuff, so we were going to be in the ballpark here anyway. And we got, once again, 2 that are relatively close to each other, and we threw a flyer up here high. So don't love that. I would have liked to have seen all 3 of them down here, but kind of the same 2 pretty close to each other, and then a flyer that we saw up there at the top as well. And that group size is right at 5.84. Same from the center of the bottom hole to the center of the top hole. So is it still minute of deer at 50? Technically, yeah, but this is a 410 slug. You're already not carrying a massive amount of energy, and it is just a limited projectile overall. So would I push this combo to 50 yards for deer? Probably not. It's a 25, 30 yard combination if I wanted to use it for that purpose. So it does appear that these may like a little less choke, like improved cylinder, than what they did through this fixed full choke. And just looking at it here, it kind of does look like a couple of those bullet holes are sideways, at least on the camera lens, but I can confirm that is not the actual case. All 6 of these bullet holes are dead on straight. It's just the way that the paper decided to tear. So no concerns there at all. It's just kind of is what it is for accuracy results. Good at 25, 30 yards or so, but once you get farther than that, you may really start to see where those flyers are coming into play. Okay, so now we got to know what kind of terminal performance we actually have out of these. Again, obviously, 410 slugs are not the best, most ideal shotgun loading to deer hunt with, although you absolutely can do it. You just have to pick a good quality slug, like these Brennekes that are actually going to hold together and penetrate well, and you have to be selective about your shot choices that you make as well, because 410 slugs don't afford you a lot of wiggle room. So we have already tested these slugs into some water jugs in the previous test with them, and they showed some very nice looking results, but now we've got some ballistics gel. These blocks are a little bit dirtier because we've been using them all summer for handgun testing and stuff, but these are going to be perfect for turning them into kind of shotgun and slug oriented testing blocks, because we can still see everything we need to see. They're just not quite as pretty. So considering the accuracy results we saw, I'm going to walk it back to about 25 yards and we'll take a shot into the gel and see what we actually do as far as terminal performance goes. I've got the chrono as well, so we can calculate some muzzle energy from the actual shot that we take. And of course, we'll pull the projectile out of the blocks as long as we catch one of them anyway, and see how they actually look outside of the block. So let's get a good view of these. I'll walk it to 25. We'll put one into these blocks. It's 2 16-inch blocks of 10% gel. So this should be a really nice example on what they can really do in an actual hunting oriented situation. All right, looks like we had 1488 for that shot, so we can utilize that chrono number to be able to calculate some energy results here in just a few minutes. And now over here at our gel block, we see some very interesting performance here. The slug is a little bit favored towards the back end of the block, so we'll get a look on that side here in just a minute. And the sun's coming out real nice, so we can see it entered up front, immediate wound track, pretty much all the way through until we get 3/4 of the way through the first block, and then we have our slug sitting just into the beginning of the second block. Looks like total penetration is sitting just past the 17-inch mark there, so perfectly adequate performance. This is a 410 slug, of course, everything held together just like it was designed to. If we come around to the front, we've got a pretty decent sized little entry hole there, and we can really see that wound tract on this side a little bit better. Pretty nice looking overall. That carries out till probably 3/4 of the way through the first block again. And then of course, there is our slug sitting right there in the second block. So as far as performance goes out of these, about what I thought we would see. The slug held together just fine. I wouldn't expect anything different from one of these Brenneke slugs. That's exactly what we've seen time and time again from them. Obviously a rifle would probably penetrate a little farther down into the second block, but I'd say that's perfectly adequate. If you wanted to use these for deer hunting purposes, that would certainly work. And if you had a longer barrel like what we had in my Mossberg 500, you'd have a little more velocity to work with, and you may get a couple extra inches of penetration out of it as well, because these slugs don't really expand. The nose flattens out just a little bit on them, and that's about it. So pretty much perfect performance. You would certainly be able to take deer with that all day long. If you put the slug where it needs to go, it's going to do the job. Although obviously I think it would have been really impressive to get way down here into that second block, but 410 slug at the end of the day here. So let's pull it out of the gel. We'll take it into the bench, measure it, weigh it, calculate some energy, and see how it really performed.
All right, so now we're in here on the bench. We've got our 410 slug that we fired into the gel here on the left with an unfired version of it on the right. If I spin these around a little bit, we can see how the nose on the one on the left flattened out just a little bit. If I stand them up, you can see the difference there as well. Not much deformation to them, but they're not really designed to either. This is what they're intended for, is to hold together and penetrate as deep as they possibly can, and they did exactly what they were designed to do overall. You can see we had a little bit of squishing on the sides as well, trying to squeeze through that choke, but that is why they have those lands and grooves on the side to be able to do that with. Overall, held together exactly like it should have. We kept our little tail piece on there as well, so nice and stable in flight. Everything looks perfect as far as the performance goes. As far as measurements go, our unfired slug is right at .406, so just a tiny little bit under the 41 caliber that a 410 is, which is probably why they prefer something like an improved cylinder to have just a little bit of contact at the end of the barrel. Comparing that now to kind of the widest area down there on the nose of our fired slug, it's smashed to right about .444, so a little bit, but not a ton of expansion. As far as the weight goes, an unfired slug sits right at 116 for total weight. They're claiming 114 and saying a 1/4 ounce, which is actually 109.3 or something about like that. So we're a little overweight, and some of that may be including that little tail wad piece at the back. But our fired slug, I would imagine, is about the same, but we're actually sitting right at 111.2. So did we lose a little bit of material off of that from somewhere? I don't know, maybe. Doesn't really look like it. Maybe it squeezed a little bit off of the sides there going through the choke or something, because you wouldn't imagine that that would have lost any sort of weight.
So now that we've got our numbers and doing some calculations after the fact here, we had a muzzle velocity for this particular shot at 1488. I'm going to utilize the entire weight of an unfired slug, which is apparently about 116 grains to start off with anyway. If we do the math, that gives us about 570 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So definitely nothing over the top, but energy isn't necessarily the killing factor when it comes to these. It's kind of in the same ballpark as deer hunting with a handgun. You've got what would be similar penetration, but it also has a good wound channel to go along with it. The slug held together like it was supposed to. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, a longer barrel would provide a little bit more velocity to pick up the energy numbers just a little bit. All right, well, what do we think about the performance here on these Brenneke 410 slugs? Overall, did about how I expected them to do. I wouldn't have minded to see a little better accuracy from them, but this is a fixed full choke gun, and we have tested them through a Mossberg 500 that I had an improved cylinder choke screwed into, and they did give us noticeably better accuracy results out at 50 yards. So on the accuracy front, if you have a gun that's got changeable chokes, run a cylinder, improved cylinder, something like that, and see what they do, because it may very well be a little better than a full choke is, at least when it comes to these Brenneke slugs. So we have seen better accuracy from them. If this is the combo I had to run 25, 30 yards or so, and it's still going to take a deer just fine. But when it comes to terminal performance here, little over 17 inches of penetration. The slug didn't come apart at all. It held together, flattened the nose out just a little bit, had a pretty nice looking wound tract up there 3/4 of the way through that first block. So it would absolutely do the job on a deer hunt for sure. Brenneke kind of advertises these as a small game or predator option. It would do the job there as well, but really deer hunting with a 410 is kind of the best case scenario for these in my opinion. Everybody's going to have their different thoughts on if you should or shouldn't deer hunt with a 410 in general. You see the performance here, so make your own decision as far as is that good enough for you to want to take it out. I know plenty of people have and would not hesitate to do it, and I know there's also going to be the other side of the fence as well, that it's just not something that they would try. Neither of which is a bad opinion. It's just going to come down to personal preference. For me, I would definitely deer hunt with these, but I would probably do it from my Mossberg with a little bit better accuracy results. But that's why you test different guns and chokes and see what actually works and what doesn't. But let me know all your thoughts down below. Is this about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Brenneke 410 slugs? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a result you would ever actually take out hunting for any reason? Or are you in the camp where it's neat, but you would probably still just stick to 12 or 20 gauge or something and call it a day? And maybe what other stuff do you want to see us do when it comes to 410 slugs, whether it be these Brennekes or anything else? Obviously, I plan to try and hunt with these sometime really soon, especially this fall, and see what they can do actually in the field on a real live deer. So keep an eye out for that here in a couple months, because we'll certainly be trying it. But let me know if there's something else you guys might want to see in the meantime. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, you have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.